8 thyroid warning signs most people overlook. 20 million Americans have a thyroid problem right now. 6 out of every 10 of them have no idea. And the reason that number stays so high isn't complicated. A struggling thyroid almost never feels like a thyroid problem. It feels like getting older. It feels like sleeping 8 hours and waking up tired anyway. Like being cold in a room where everyone else is comfortable. Like walking into the kitchen and standing there, trying to remember why you came in. These are exactly the things we shrug off. We blame the years, the weather, a rough night, a busy week. Some people spend years quietly afraid they are losing their memory, when the real explanation was sitting in a gland the size of a butterfly, low in the front of the neck, the entire time. One quick note before we continue. This video is educational only. It cannot diagnose anyone, and it is never a substitute for your own doctor. What it can do is show you the pattern. Because that gland, small as it is, weighs less than an ounce and yet produces hormones that reach nearly every cell you have. Your heartbeat runs on it. Your body temperature, your digestion, your memory, your mood, even the texture of your hair and skin. When the gland makes too little hormone, doctors call it hypothyroidism, and everything in the body slows down. When it makes too much, that is hyperthyroidism, and everything speeds up. Neither one arrives overnight. They creep in over months, sometimes years, changing you so gradually that the person in the mirror always looks like the person you saw yesterday. Age is the part that matters most for many of you watching. Risk climbs steadily after 60, and a great many cases are first discovered in people who assumed their symptoms were simply the cost of another birthday. A family history raises the odds. So does a history of autoimmune conditions, since the leading cause of an underactive thyroid in this country is Hashimoto's, a condition where the immune system slowly turns against the gland by mistake. Certain medications and past radiation to the head or neck can play a role too, and women carry a far heavier share of this burden than men do. None of that means trouble is coming for you. It simply means that if any of it sounds familiar, the 8 signs ahead are worth your full attention. Here is the good news, and I want to say it early so it stays with you. Thyroid disease is one of the more manageable conditions in all of medicine. Finding it usually takes one ordinary blood draw. The hard part was never the treating. The hard part is the noticing, because these signs hide so well inside everyday life. So over the next few minutes, we will go through 8 of them, in plain language, one at a time. A few will sound familiar. At least one will probably surprise you. And one of them is something you can check on your own face. In a mirror, in about 3 seconds, a clue doctors have relied on for more than 100 years that most people have never heard of. That one is coming later. Once you know it, you will never look at your reflection the same way. For now, we start with the sign that sends more people to the doctor than any other, and gets misread more often than any other, too. Number 1, fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. Everyone gets tired. But thyroid fatigue is a different animal, and people who have experienced it will tell you it's hard to describe to anyone who hasn't. This isn't the pleasant heaviness you feel after a long day of yard work. It's waking up after 8 or 9 full hours of sleep and feeling like you barely slept at all. It's needing a nap to get through the afternoon when you never used to nap. It's the sensation that your body is moving through water while everyone around you moves through air. The reason comes down to energy production. Thyroid hormone acts like a thermostat for your metabolism, telling your cells how quickly to convert fuel into usable energy. When hormone levels drop, that conversion slows across the entire body at once. Your muscles have less to work with, your brain has less to work with. No amount of coffee or willpower can fully override it because the problem isn't motivation. It's chemistry. Consider a woman like Margaret, a retired schoolteacher in her late 60s. For most of her life, she was the person who arrived early and stayed late. Then, over the course of about a year, she started skipping her morning walks. She stopped meeting friends for lunch because the drive felt like too much. Her family assumed she was simply slowing down with age, and honestly, so did she. It wasn't until a routine blood test that her doctor spotted an underactive thyroid. Within a few months of treatment, guided by her physician, the fog began to lift, and she described it as getting her old self back. Now, fatigue on its own could be caused by dozens of things, from anemia to sleep apnea to simple overwork. That's exactly why it gets overlooked. The detail that may point toward the thyroid is persistence. If your exhaustion has lasted for weeks or months, doesn't improve with rest, and comes bundled with other changes on this list, it may be worth discussing a thyroid blood test with a healthcare professional. It's one of the simplest tests in medicine, and it can answer a question that guessing never will. The main test measures a hormone called TSH, which is the signal your brain sends to tell the thyroid how hard to work. Oddly enough, a high level of that signal usually points to an underactive gland, because the brain is shouting at a thyroid that isn't keeping up, while a low level often points the other way. Your doctor may add a couple of related measurements to complete the picture, but the whole thing is typically a single, ordinary blood draw. And speaking of changes that get blamed on everything except the real cause, the next sign might be the most frustrating one of all. Number 2, weight changes you can't explain. Few things are more demoralizing than doing everything right and watching the scale move in the wrong direction anyway. With an underactive thyroid, weight gain often arrives quietly. 5 pounds, then 10, sometimes more, without any real change in eating habits or activity. And because the metabolism has slowed, the usual advice, eat a little less and move a little more, often produces disappointing results. People blame themselves. They assume they've lost discipline. In reality, their body is burning fewer calories at rest than it used to, sometimes hundreds fewer per day, and no one told them the rules had changed. It's worth knowing that thyroid-related weight gain is usually modest, and a portion of it is actually retained fluid rather than fat. An underactive thyroid causes the body to hold on to salt and water, which is also why some people notice a puffy face or swollen hands in the morning. That puffiness is a clue in its own right. The opposite pattern deserves just as much attention, though it worries people far less than it should. When the thyroid becomes overactive, the metabolism races, and weight can fall off without any effort at all. Someone might lose 10 or 15 pounds while eating more than ever, and here's the trap: many people celebrate it. They assume their new diet finally worked, or that stress simply curbed their appetite. Unexplained weight loss, especially when it comes with a rapid heartbeat, sweating, or anxiety, could be a sign of hyperthyroidism, and it may be worth bringing up with a doctor rather than quietly enjoying it. Think of it this way: your weight is a conversation between your habits and your hormones, and the thyroid gets a very loud vote. When the scale changes and your life hasn't, that mismatch is information. Which brings us to a sign that has nothing to do with the scale, and everything to do with how the world feels against your skin. Number 3, always cold or suddenly always hot. Here's a scene that plays out in homes across the country every single evening. One person is wrapped in a blanket in the middle of summer, and the other is opening windows in January. We joke about it, we fight over the thermostat, and we almost never ask whether it means anything. Sometimes it does. Your thyroid is deeply involved in generating body heat. The energy your cells produce doesn't just power movement and thought. A large share of it is released as warmth. When thyroid hormone runs low, the internal furnace burns cooler, and people become genuinely intolerant of cold. We're not talking about preferring a sweater. We're talking about cold hands and feet even in a warm room, shivering when no one else is, piling on layers that never quite help. Some people with underactive thyroids describe feeling chilled from the inside, a cold that a hot shower only fixes for a few minutes. Flip the switch to an overactive thyroid, and the furnace roars. Heat intolerance sets in. A person might sweat through their shirt in mild weather, kick the covers off every night, and feel flushed and uncomfortable in rooms that everyone else finds pleasant. Women in midlife often assume these are hot flashes from menopause, and understandably so, since the timing frequently overlaps. That overlap is one of the reasons thyroid disease in women gets missed, because women are 5 to 8 times more likely than men to develop thyroid problems in the first place, and their symptoms are often attributed to hormones of a different kind. Take someone like Frank, a 72-year-old retired mechanic who spent his career in unheated garages through Midwestern winters without a complaint. When he suddenly couldn't sit in his own living room without a jacket and a space heater, his wife noticed before he did. He kept insisting the house was drafty. The house was fine. A checkup revealed his thyroid had slowed considerably, something his doctor was able to address. The lesson in his story is simple. When your temperature comfort zone shifts dramatically and stays shifted, your body may be telling you something about your metabolism, and it may be worth a conversation with a professional. And while temperature changes happen where no one can see them, the next sign is written somewhere very visible, and it's the one we hinted at earlier. Number 4, the eyebrow sign. This is the one I promised you at the beginning, the 3-second mirror check. If there's a mirror near you, go look now or just run a finger along your brow. Find the outer edge of your eyebrows, the part closest to your temples. In some people with an underactive thyroid, that outer third of the eyebrow gradually thins out and can disappear entirely. Doctors have a name for it that dates back generations, and while it isn't foolproof, it's specific enough that a sharp clinician might notice it before the patient says a single word about how they feel. The reason it happens ties back to how thyroid hormone governs the life cycle of hair. Every hair on your body, including your eyebrows, grows in cycles, resting and shedding and regrowing on a schedule. Thyroid hormone helps keep that cycle running smoothly. When levels fall, hair spends more time resting and less time growing, and the follicles at the delicate outer brow, which are already sparse, are among the first to show it. The same slowdown can leave the hair on your head feeling thinner, drier, and more brittle, sometimes coming out in the shower drain in alarming little clumps. Here's what makes this sign so easy to miss. It happens slowly, symmetrically, and painlessly. There's no itch, no rash, no single dramatic moment. People pluck and pencil and simply adjust, never suspecting that a gland in their neck has anything to do with the face in the mirror. The skin often joins the story around the same time. An underactive thyroid can leave the skin dry, rough, and unusually pale, sometimes with a slightly cool, doughy feel to the touch. Lotion helps for an hour and then the dryness returns because the cause isn't on the surface. It's the slowed metabolism reducing oil production and blood flow to the skin. Nails may turn brittle and ridged, splitting or peeling more than they used to. Taken alone, dry winter skin means very little. Layered on top of everything else, it becomes another thread in the same pattern. I'm not suggesting that thin eyebrows alone mean anything is wrong. Plenty of things affect eyebrows, including age and years of overplucking. But when the outer brows fade at the same time you're battling fatigue, cold hands, and unexplained weight gain, that cluster of clues may be worth mentioning to a healthcare professional. Patterns matter more than any single detail, and this next sign proves that better than almost any other. Number 5, brain fog and forgetfulness. Of all the ways a struggling thyroid can announce itself, this may be the most quietly frightening, especially for older adults. People describe walking into a room and forgetting why, losing the thread of a sentence halfway through, reading the same paragraph 3 times and still not absorbing it, struggling to recall a familiar name that used to come instantly. It feels like the mind has gone soft at the edges, and for many people, the first fear that surfaces is dementia. Here's the reassuring part, and it's important. When the thyroid is the cause, this kind of mental cloudiness is often reversible once the underlying problem is addressed by a doctor. The brain, it turns out, is enormously sensitive to thyroid hormone. That same hormone that regulates energy in your muscles also keeps the pace of thought crisp and the machinery of memory well-oiled. When it runs low, thinking slows, concentration frays, and the emotional weather can turn gray, since low thyroid function is also linked with low mood and depression. Picture a man named Harold, 78, who started leaving the stove on and misplacing his keys with a frequency that scared his daughter. The family began having difficult conversations about whether he could still live alone. Before making any decisions, his doctor ran a full panel of blood work and there it was, a thyroid level far below normal. The emotional side of this deserves its own moment because it's so often misread. A person whose thyroid has slowed may find themselves feeling flat, unmotivated, and inexplicably down. And that low mood gets treated as depression on its own, sometimes for years, without anyone checking the gland underneath it. On the flip side, an overactive thyroid can breed a jittery, wired anxiety, a sense of being permanently on edge, sometimes with irritability or trouble sleeping. When someone's emotional life shifts noticeably and nothing in their circumstances seems to explain it, a thyroid check is a small, sensible thing for a doctor to include. This is not to say every case of forgetfulness traces back to the thyroid, because it certainly does not, and memory changes always deserve a proper medical evaluation. But because a thyroid test is simple and inexpensive, and because a treatable cause is such welcome news, checking it is a reasonable early step that a physician can help arrange. It's a reminder that not every alarming symptom means the worst, which is exactly why the next sign, one that beats inside your chest, deserves a calm and careful look. Number 6, a heart that races or drags. Your heart is exquisitely tuned to thyroid hormone, and it responds fast when levels drift out of range. With an overactive thyroid, the heart can speed up, pound, or flutter. People describe a racing pulse while sitting perfectly still, a heartbeat they can feel in their throat, or odd skip-beat sensations that come and go. Some develop a specific irregular rhythm called atrial fibrillation, where the upper chambers of the heart quiver instead of beating cleanly, and that rhythm carries real risks that a doctor needs to manage. An underactive thyroid tends to do the opposite. It can slow the heart rate down, sometimes below 60 beats per minute, and contribute to higher cholesterol, which quietly stresses the cardiovascular system over time. Neither extreme announces itself politely. A slow heart may just feel like more of that bone-deep tiredness we already talked about, while a fast one gets brushed off as too much caffeine, stress, or nerves. There's a woman named Dorothy who felt her heart flutter now and then and assumed it was anxiety, so she cut back on coffee and tried to relax. The flutter stayed. When she finally mentioned it during a routine visit, her doctor listened, ordered tests, and discovered an overactive thyroid driving the whole thing. Her story carries a gentle warning worth repeating. Heart symptoms are never the place to guess or wait things out. Any new, persistent, or frightening change in your heartbeat is a reason to contact a healthcare professional promptly. And if you ever have chest pain, fainting, or severe shortness of breath, that's a moment to call 911 without hesitation. Once your heart has your attention, though, there's a slower, subtler sign that unfolds in a place most people would never connect to their thyroid. Number 7, digestion that slows to a crawl. Your gut runs on rhythm. The muscular walls of your intestines contract in steady waves to move food along, and thyroid hormone helps set the tempo of those waves. When the thyroid slows down, digestion often slows with it, and the most common result is stubborn, persistent constipation that doesn't respond well to the usual fixes. People add fiber, drink more water, try every remedy on the pharmacy shelf, and still feel sluggish and backed up, because the real bottleneck is hormonal, not dietary. On the other end of the spectrum, an overactive thyroid can throw the system into overdrive, causing more frequent bowel movements or loose stools as everything moves through too quickly. Either way, a noticeable and lasting change in your digestive habits, without any change in your diet, is a signal worth paying attention to rather than tolerating in silence. Close cousins of this sign live in the muscles and joints. Many people with an underactive thyroid develop deep, aching muscles, stiffness, cramps, and a general weakness that makes stairs and grocery bags feel heavier than they should. It's easy to write off as arthritis or simply the wear and tear of getting older, and sometimes that's exactly what it is. But when the aches arrive alongside fatigue, cold intolerance, and sluggish digestion, they may be one more voice in the same chorus. Treating the thyroid, under a doctor's care, often eases these complaints in a way that painkillers never quite managed. What makes this sign especially easy to overlook is how private and undramatic it is. Nobody wants to talk about their bathroom habits, so they don't, not even with their doctor. Yet these changes rarely travel alone. The same person struggling with sluggish digestion is often the one who's also exhausted, cold, foggy, and quietly gaining weight. That's the thread running through this entire video, and it's the key to everything. No single sign is the whole story. It's the constellation, the way several small changes appear around the same time, that tells the real tale. Which is exactly why the final sign matters so much, because it's the one you can sometimes see and feel with your own hands. Number 8, changes in the neck and voice. We end where most people wrongly assume thyroid trouble begins, the neck itself. Sometimes the gland enlarges, producing a visible swelling at the base of the front of the neck that doctors call a goiter. It might look like a general fullness or a lump, and it may move up and down slightly when you swallow. Not every case is visible, but some people first notice it while buttoning a collar that suddenly feels tight, or when a spouse points out a change they hadn't seen themselves. The gland can also develop nodules, which are small lumps within the tissue. Here's the reassuring context, because this is a topic that understandably makes people anxious. The vast majority of thyroid nodules are completely benign, meaning not cancerous, and many cause no problems at all. Still, because a small number do need attention, any new lump or swelling in the neck is something a doctor should examine, often with a simple, painless ultrasound. Then there's the voice, a clue people almost never connect to this gland. Because the thyroid sits so close to the nerves and structures that control the voice box, thyroid problems can occasionally cause hoarseness, a raspy quality, or a voice that tires easily. A persistent change in your voice that isn't explained by a cold and doesn't clear up after a few weeks is worth mentioning to a professional, even if it seems minor. Think about someone like Ruth, 70, who blamed her growing hoarseness on allergies for the better part of a year. When it still hadn't improved, her doctor examined her neck, felt a nodule, and ordered imaging to take a closer look. In her case, it turned out to be harmless, but the peace of mind she gained from simply checking was worth every minute of the visit. So let's bring it all together, because the real message of this video isn't any single symptom. It's the pattern. Fatigue that sleep won't fix, weight that shifts without reason, a body that can't find its comfortable temperature, eyebrows quietly thinning at the edges, a mind wrapped in fog, a heart that races or drags, digestion that stalls, and changes you can feel in your own neck and voice. Any one of these can have a dozen innocent explanations. But several of them arriving together and lingering is the kind of quiet pattern that has convinced doctors for over a century to take a closer look at that small butterfly-shaped gland. Remember the number we started with. An estimated 20 million Americans are living with thyroid disease, and up to 60% of them don't yet know it. Remember what I told you at the start about how treatable this is. An underactive thyroid is usually managed with a small daily pill, carefully dosed and adjusted by a doctor over time, and an overactive one has its own set of well-established options. All of that depends on someone noticing first. The single most useful thing you can do is a simple blood test, and that's a conversation to have with a healthcare professional who knows your full history. None of this is a diagnosis, and your body is far too individual to be sorted out by any video. Consider this a nudge to listen more closely and to ask better questions the next time you sit across from your doctor. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 8 signs surprised you the most, or have you experienced something on this list that you'd always chalked up to getting older? Share your story in the comments, because someone scrolling past may recognize themselves in your words and finally get the answers they've been missing. If this video helped you see something in a new light, pass it along to a friend or family member who might need it. And consider subscribing so we can keep exploring the quiet signals your body sends long before it ever shouts. Take care of yourself, pay attention to the patterns, and we'll see you in the next one.